Hey guys, Effie here. Today I'm going to show you how I watercolor this card using our Peony Duo stamp sets and Ken Oliver color burst. So I'm going to start off by doing some white heat embossing, but I'm going to do a little masking. So here you can just see how I'm going to position my. Then I'll use my Misty tool to stamp my first peony with some embossing ink. Then I poured on some white embossing powder and hit the whole panel with my heat gun. Next, I'm going to lay over my temporary mask that I made using just some regular printer paper and temporary adhesive. After I placed the mask over that first flower, I went ahead and stamped my second peony and embossed that with white embossing powder. Then I placed a mask over both of those flowers, and then I stamped some leaves around my mass floral cluster. Masking is a great technique that you can use to create a simple one-layered card. For my final project today, the only thing that's going to be popped up is my sentiment strip, but everything else on my card today is going to be flat. So after I've gone ahead and heat emboss everything, I'm just going to watercolor everything, slap on a sentiment, and throw on some sequins. So besides the masking, the more involved activity of today's project is the actual watercoloring. So I'm going to be doing some wet and wet watercoloring using Ken Oliver color bursts in alizarin crimson for the petals and terre vert, which is a deep green, for my leaves. So for my wet and wet watercoloring, I wet the petal areas first with some clean water using a medium or large tipped water brush, as long as you have a somewhat thicker brush, because the fine tip brush is not really good for applying clean water to larger areas. So that's why I use either a medium or large tip brush. Whatever my hand grabs is what I use, except if it's a fine tip brush. I'll use a fine tip brush to apply the pigment to the inner portions of my petals, and then I'll just go ahead and use that large tip brush to blend the pigment out. Now, I am going a little bit fast here. The video is sped up only because the actual technique that I'm applying is very repetitive. I'm literally just adding pigment to the inner portions of my petals and then blending that color out. This is the technique that I'm using over and over, but I'm using it to lay a base color of the alizarin crimson, and then I'm actually using the same technique to add deeper concentrations of pigment to my inner petals to add more shading. Once I finish painting my first peony, I'm going to go ahead and paint that second peony. And the second peony, I'm just going to speed up the video a lot so that you can watch the progression of the actual painting in about 24 seconds. The same painting technique was used on the second peony, so I don't want to bore you with additional details. I'm just using the same wet and wet technique and that blending out technique for each petal on this second peony. So once I'm finished painting my peony clusters, I'm going to paint my leaves with the terre vert color burst. Now, what you also don't really see me doing, but I do it off camera, I add a little bit of color outside my embossed lines around the floral cluster, around the leaves, and this is just going to add a nice aura of color in some portions of my panel to give my project a little bit of interest. Next, I just stamped this Your Amazing sentiment using our Noir Dye Black Ink onto some white cardstock. I trimmed the sentiment out into a strip. Then I also trimmed my panel. Then I just cut a strip of dimensional foam tape, applied it behind my sentiment strip, and just popped that up over my panel. Next, I adhered some of our glass slipper sequins onto my project using Thermoweb's Ultra Bond liquid adhesive. Now guys, this is some super strong, really awesome liquid adhesive from Thermoweb. I absolutely love it. The sequins are not going to fall off unless you intentionally or forcefully rip them off your page. Like, they are not going to come off. Now, Thermoweb did send me this glue for free, but this opinion is entirely my own, and I really do love this glue, and I'll be using it in all of my projects for my embellishments. So my card is now complete. I hope you guys enjoyed today's project and tutorial. If you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube because I update it weekly. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.